Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Chasing Dreams podcast, episode 69 with Charlie and Justin. We are recording once again remotely. So, Justin, how are you doing tonight?
I am fantastic. How you doing? How them boys doing at States?
Doing well. Yes, for those of you that don't know, I'm away at a state tournament for wrestling, which is why Justin and I are currently recording about 3 hours apart from one another, and why it's also at night because typically we've been on this roll lately. I know we're kind of all over the place, but I feel like as of late, and I mean over the past several months, there's only been a few instances where we've recorded in the evening. It's mostly mornings.
Right, absolutely. I think that's because we're both early to rise.
Yeah, and plus it's easy because
So
like schedule wise, there's not much going on at 6 or 5 or 4 in the morning. So if we need
right.
free time, there's where you find the free time, right?
Well, you make it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree.
Anyway, boys are doing well. So what we do is because of COVID, they've broken the well. First of all, it's not at the Shot anymore. So instead of having it in this big arena, what they've done is Ohio has three divisions of wrestling for those listeners that don't know, and it's Division One, Division Two, Division Three. Division One being the largest, and Division Three being the smallest. And instead of them having states in one central location, what they did is they broke the divisions down into different high schools. So we are at a high school in Marengo, Ohio. Um, so it's not as prestigious in the sense of how it feels. It's not in this huge arena, with thousands of people. It's at a gym and they have limited amount of passes. And what they're doing is they're actually breaking it down into weight classes by time. So 106 through 145 are the seven smaller weight classes. They wrestle in the morning, and right now we have the evening session going on. 152 through heavyweight are the other seven weight classes. So it's definitely different than anything that wrestling has experienced in the past, and it makes the schedule hectic because you're trying to coach kids that are wrestling in the morning, and then you're worried about the ones that are back at the hotel. So luckily for me, being the strength coach, I don't have a lot of the on mat coaching, obviously. So it's nice because I get to stay back and make sure that the kids are hydrated, make sure that they're up and moving, and basically become an overglorified babysitter for the whole weekend.
Right,
So, but
right.
yeah, we're doing well. I think gosh, I don't even know how many teams are here. Well over 50 teams are represented. Last I checked, we were in eighth as a team based on point standings. We have one wrestler who looks like he should be on his way to the state finals. And we have a few others that are likely going to be placing as well. So overall, good
Awesome.
weekend so far. Don't want to talk before you don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, but overall,
Right.
pleased thus far. How's your evening going and your weekend so far?
It's been doing pretty good, man. It's awesome. This is a good week for training for me and everything. So I started into a 5x5 this week on all the three major lifts,
Mhm.
and first time I've done it in a few months, and man, it did feel good, like real good. I was a little concerned because like I'm training at the fire station pretty much solely now, and some of our equipment's kind of um, barbaric, but yeah, it felt good. I liked it.
I was going to ask, so I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you. We're having a quick, casual conversation before recording, like we generally do, and this is usually something that we kind of talk training nuance a little bit together. And I didn't bring it up, so I wanted to ask you now. So you kind of already answered it. You're not doing any type of training in the morning, then it's strictly in the evening for you.
Yeah, for now, just because I've started working so early, like I've been starting my work day at like 2:30, three
Sure.
o'clock. So I and I'm training in the evening at like between 6 and 7
Hmm.
because that's when the group of guys and girls that have been training with me are all off work like at the same time.
Yep.
So trying to fit my schedule to everybody else is like usual, which is fine. I like doing that.
Yep.
I just have pulled everything from the morning for now. I think it's gonna have to change, but like I said, like the start time that I've been doing the morning thing is kind of voluntary. So I might move my start time back to a normal time and start doing some cardio more and more and more in the morning. I like to do cardio in the morning. Okay, let me rephrase that. I hate doing cardio in the morning, but I like doing that because I don't like it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like to push through that uncomfortable zone in the morning because like you roll out of bed, I like to like get out of bed and go lift because I have time to stretch and get warmed up. Whereas where cardio, you're right into it. You can stretch, but your joints are still tired and sore. So it's one of those discomfort zones that I like
Mhm.
to operate in.
Something good that's coming up too, which will probably affect your training a little bit in mine as well. Even though we're losing an hour of sleep, it's still good because we have turning the clocks ahead. So there's going to be more
Yes,
daylight in the evening, which I'm a huge fan of course.
absolutely. And training at the fire station for me, we can move our stuff just about wherever we want. So when it starts to get nicer and nicer out, I think we're going to move, like the basic stuff in and out and go
Mhm.
outside, do some training outside. It's something I've always thought about doing and never been able to. There's no gyms around here that have like that Cali feel where like they have stuff out in the back in the elements.
Yeah.
So I would love to get some experience where using gym equipment, but outside.
Hmm.
So we'll probably do some of that a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to having the more daylight. I feel like for some reason, and it's probably looped somehow related to circadian rhythm with me because I try to keep that stuff so well regulated that once it's nighttime, it's like melatonin production starts in, and my body's like, okay, it's time to taper down a little bit. So I've never been a big fan of lifting in the evenings when it's dark out. And part of that is not just physiological. I'm sure some of it's psychological as well, where I just don't like getting revved up when it's that late at night. The other thing for me now is it's kind of a moot point anyway, just out of necessity that I have to train in the morning because I'm so busy throughout the day that come evening time when I would have, some semblance or little bit of free time, the last thing I want to do or the last thing that I'm able to do would be to have a productive training session. You're
Right.
super tired. And one of the things I talked about is like giving energy before, try to give energy to people throughout the whole
Hmm.
day. When you do that for the entirety of your day, as the day winds down, the tank is essentially empty and there's not really much left to provide or allocate to a productive workout. So I definitely don't
Right.
mind working out in the morning when it's dark out because then it's again a different psychological state where it's dark and
You're
you realize
winning.
that nobody has started yet. Yeah.
That's, you know how I feel about that. That's why I like to run in the middle of winter outside because it's like, who else is doing this? It's
Hmm.
it's that win. It's that win. It's kind of like me contradicting myself all the time. Like because I posted on Instagram the other day where I said, "I'm not in competition with you. I'm in competition with myself, and I hate to lose." You know, so I seen that somewhere, and I can't remember. I wish I did, so I could like give them like a shout out. But I seen that, and I was like, I love this because it's so true. But
Hmm.
then I contradict myself because, like you said, like early in the morning, or out in the elements, running in the snow and sleet and rain. It's that competition with everybody else. Like there's not very many people go out and do something they don't have to do in the elements.
I've always been one to embrace things that are beneficial to me, obviously. Whereas I don't want to say I don't feel pain or I don't feel hunger, I don't feel any of that. But for me, it's just very myopically focused on is this making me better or is it not? And if it's making me better, then I don't care what it is, I'll do it. So, for instance,
Right.
I've had some conversation with some of my nutrition clients who are, in fat burning mode or in prep mode. And I always tell them, embrace the hunger. I know this is not always the case, and I don't want to make an overgeneralized statement here, but more often than not, if you were hungry, then you were probably eliciting some form of lipolysis. So you're probably burning fat. So embrace being hungry. When I would be
Right.
hungry on my diet before a show, I always enjoyed that feeling because I thought, this has to be productive if I'm this starving. There has to be some fat burning going on.
Right.
Likewise with cardio. Towards the end of my the last show that I did, towards the end of my prep, and it was only for like the last week or two. It was just during depletion stages where I was doing double sessions of cardio, where it was broken up morning and night. It wasn't a ton, but what I was doing is I was waking up first thing in the morning and doing my cardio, fasted, so on an empty stomach prior to starting my day. So I would get up,
Right.
and it was, for a show in November. So where we live in Ohio, there's often snow by that point. And I was waking up, first thing in the morning at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was. And I was going outside in the frigid cold and I was walking. And there was something that was it was very liberating for me. And I've mentioned that like in terms of training before. It's just when you're up that early, you feel like it's so much more beneficial because I'm up early and it's cold and I'm hungry. So if I'm suffering this much, it has to be more beneficial to me. Now that's not always the
Right.
case. And, there's counter arguments to getting up early and, breaking up your sleep. But as long as the sleep is quality, I just enjoy getting up early. It's so much more of a mental game for me at that point than anything.
Yeah. And, so talking about quality and sleep in the same conversation, I have a newborn.
Yeah, right.
So that's something that I am definitely going to have to give into. I think, I've been talking about it for a long time where I operate well with no sleep or very little sleep.
Hmm.
I'm realizing that what I used to do, how I go on 4 hours of sleep, and everything I did in my day was not to say I'm like super selfish, but I just plan my day around me. You know what I mean? Like everything else is kind of fit, but now I have a newborn that requires my time, which is awesome. I'm so excited about it all the time. I need to maybe like form my day around her and fit my stuff in the other spots. So I need to start sleeping better so I'm more well rested at night.
Hmm.
But it's coming. It's coming along. My like the first month, like that first month was weird because it was so simple. It went really easily. Like everything we did seemed to work perfect. And I was sleeping, I was training, I was eating right. And now like we're in that second month where I think she's testing the waters a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And so everything is she's got me off my game a little bit, but that's okay. I think that's to be expected. You know what I mean? Kind of part of the growing pains of learning how to adapt and overcome. But that's something that I'm trying to do is make myself add sleep into my schedule more.
What I think for you, and for anybody for that matter, sleep is a primary example of that, is we always talk about like blending the line between sustainable and optimal. So
Right.
generally, we're working from optimal to sustainable. You put together an optimal plan of like what's the perfect diet for someone to follow. This would be the best case scenario for someone. And then, I always have this with clients where we put together a plan that's would be best for them, but then we have to maybe make a few compromises because of someone's schedule or because of someone's budget or whatever. So usually you start with the optimal plan and then you kind of chip away at it until it's sustainable for that individual.
Right.
For you, I think it's kind of the opposite now, where you've sustained this level for so long, and maybe even with the presence of a newborn, maybe we could work towards something that's more optimal. So maybe not improving the amount of sleep we get, but rather the quality of sleep. And I think
Right.
that part of it with you too goes back to when you first started this weight loss journey, when you and I were working together and we would talk every day and we would say, you would constantly, it was pretty much a daily occurrence where you would contact me and say, hey, this is amazing how good I feel. I could do this, or I feel better because of this amount of biofeedback, or whatever the measurable or the marker was that we're looking at. There were like minor victories every single day for you, an improvement in like body composition and energy and performance and all that stuff. And I always used to tell you, I'd say, dude, you don't even feel good right now. You just feel better than you did. Wait till we get you to the point where you feel great. And so maybe the sleep is kind of in essence very similar to that or parallels that, where you feel good and you've been able to maintain and sustain a lifestyle running on 4 hours of sleep. Going into the future, once we're able to optimize things, think about when you go 5 hours or 6 hours or 7 hours or 8 hours, think about the benefits there too, so
Right.
that's the same thing with everybody, man, whether it's business or whether it's like training specific or nutrition or whatever. It's always difficult for people, myself included, to be able to blend that line between what is best and what is practical. The
Right.
sustainability and optimization blend. It's very, very difficult, and there's no right or wrong answer for all that stuff. It's just kind of like a sliding scale. But you also have to understand the more you put in and the more optimal you can be, the better results you're going to get. So like when I
Right.
work with clients, nutritionally speaking, I'll say, hey, if you can't do this and you can't afford these foods or supplements, or we can't, we don't have a schedule that allows us to eat on these times, we can kind of maneuver the pieces of the chessboard a little bit, but ultimately it's going to fall back, and someone who is able to do this is going to make more progress than you, or you would have made more progress if you had the type of lifestyle that would allow us to do these things. So you just kind of talk to them, so it helps kind of tailor their expectations going forward. But I mean, obviously you've been no stranger to making good progress on what you're doing, so then it goes back to the old adage too, if it's not broke, don't fix it, where some people might get hesitant to try to improve something if it's still working the way they're doing it now.
Right. Right. And that's the thing, is like, I need to just, I think that's why I'm so interested in mental health, because like this is a long journey. Like, this is not going to be like, for me to get where I want to go, it's not going to be even this year or next year. Probably it's going to be, I think you hit the nail on the head really accurately last year when we talked about some of my long-term goals. At the 5 year mark, I think we'll be there.
Hmm.
And I never believed you, not that I doubted you, just, I'm overzealous sometimes. So I thought there ain't no way I'm taking 5 years to get there. But now I'm realizing, I think you were right on the number. I think at the 5 year mark, we'll look back and be like, that was awesome.
I think that it's
you
important
know,
to have those conversations with people that you trust too, um, from both ends of polarity there. So like you could have someone like yourself who you said was very like overzealous in a sense of like saying what you wanted to accomplish, whether it's, competitively or body composition or lifestyle, health or fitness or whatever you wanted to accomplish. But I think it's also important to have someone there to make sure that you're not being too conservative either, or at least someone
yes,
say don't settle for less because this is attainable within a given time frame. You're just not pushing yourself and holding yourself accountable to that time frame. It's very
right.
easy. That's why man, something that I've been a big fan of and I need to do more of is using social media. And the reason I say social media specifically is just because of outreach, but like I can do it with you, I can do it with my family, do it with other friends. But I'm a big fan of putting things out into the universe, that people hear and people receive, either vocally or in print. So then that way it kind of fosters some accountability on your end. So like I can tell people, hey, I'm going to accomplish this by this time. Because if it's just me and I have these numbers or these accomplishments or these short-term goals in my head, it's very easy to push that date back and nobody will ever know. Like I
Right.
mentioned to you when we kind of did our
I
our check-in, so to speak, for our New Year's resolutions last episode. And I said
Yes.
how, I was on pace and I accomplished one of my financial goals. And then I had a new financial goal in my head for June because we went 3 months, then I wanted to go another 3 months. Well, after I determined what that goal was over the last week, I've kind of toyed with changing it in my mind because of what I thought was realistic. And then I realized that that's exactly what was holding me back in the first place, is
Right.
my sense of realism was way too conservative compared to what it should be. You know, a conversation that I've had recently was with my coach. And I told him that there are guys that are pros now, professional bodybuilders who I have beaten within the last two or three shows that I've done. And I told him different goals, different lifestyles, different genetics. Not that I'm making excuses, but that's just the reality of it. Most of those people aren't, full-time teachers, full-time online coaches, full-time trainers. Essentially I'm trying to run 3 full-time jobs while still coaching sports and maintaining some semblance of a decent physique,
Yeah.
But regardless, and I told him, I said, there's a lot of guys that are pro that I've beaten. So it makes you sit back and wonder. I was always a realist about, my bodybuilding career, if you could call it a career or just a hobby or whatever. But I think I've been too realistic with myself. And when I wanted to change that financial goal, because I thought it's like, no, dude, that all that I'm doing at that point is just making excuses for myself, whether I like to believe that or not. And obviously that's not what I'm about. So I left it as it is. And I have this like growing itch that I have to like continue to set my goals higher, because I've pretty much accomplished all the goals that I've set out to do that are measurable. So
Right.
obviously I have ones that aren't measurable, like get better at this. Okay, well, what exactly does better look like? Does that mean like if I'm a better trader, does that mean I have more clients? Does that mean I make more money? Does it mean that my clients have, more success, or I have a higher outreach digitally? I mean, what does being a better trainer look like? But all the tangible stuff, like the measurable quantitative stuff, I've accomplished. And that's not me bragging or patting myself on the back saying, look how much I've accomplished. In fact, it's literally the exact opposite. I'm saying that I have set the bar so low for myself in so many different aspects of my life that I was never able to accomplish the things that I may have been capable of if I would have pushed the envelope a little bit more.
Yeah, we have that in common.
For sure. For sure. I
Yeah.
mean, you and I kind of early on had the discussion of when you first started, because your fitness lifestyle and losing weight journey started a little bit before you and I met. And then when we met up and started to nail down the nutrition thing, we said, "Ooh, what's possible?" And the discussion was held. Well, I think that we would both surprise ourselves at what is possible as long as we stick to doing things the exact way that we're supposed to do them.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think that's kind of a good place to leave off real quick. Let's take a commercial break and we come back. Let's continue this discussion about pushing our goals a little bit further, because I want to know, number one, what your thoughts are on that, because you said you're kind of in the similar boat. And I also want to kind of troubleshoot with you some ways that we can kind of fix this going forward for ourselves. And then maybe that'll help benefit our listeners as well. So let's take a commercial break and we'll talk when we come back. As listeners of the Chasing Dreams podcast, we know that you demand the highest quality at all times. If you're interested in quality, look no further than Beast Mode Baking. Beast Mode Baking aims to bring the highest quality, creative, and of course delicious baked goods to your home with nationwide shipping. All orders need to be pre-ordered to ensure they're packed fresh and shipped out to you as soon as possible. Beast Mode Baking offers a flat rate of $15 for shipping due to the size and weight of the cookies and doughs. So if you're interested in Beast Mode Baking, please contact CEO Shannon Knorr. That's at SKNORR13 on Instagram, and order your delicious baked goods today, because every time you support them, you're supporting the podcast as well. And we are back from our commercial break. So Justin, prior to going to the commercial, you and I were talking about goals, and we feel like we have self-limited, both in the past and in the present to some degree about, where our goals are being set. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that you and I limit ourselves and so many people do that? Like for me, sometimes I think it's a product of kind of like, this is hard to describe, and it's almost like a paradox, because if you're someone who's very intelligent, you'd probably think that you would set the bar super high because you have a very, very self-aware sense of what's possible. Sometimes I think my intelligence gets the best of me, where I overthink things, and I think that I account for too many variables. So like whenever you set a goal, that there are going to be unaccounted variables that are bumps in the road.
Right.
If you set a goal to be a triathlete, there's going to be things that happen. You're going to potentially get laid off from your job, or you might break your leg, or something might happen in your family where you have to take time off, or you might have a health scare, heaven forbid, or there may be all these issues that you kind of account for along the way. And it's almost like when I set my goals, I always set them with an understanding that there's going to be setbacks. So I almost like put that negative energy into the universe, and I self-prescribe these setbacks to happen to me. I'm like, oh, well, I know that I'm probably not going to be able to, go up 2 weight classes for my next competition, because I have to dedicate a lot of time and the effort to this. And, this is allowing me to or this is requiring a lot of my energy, so I may not be able to direct it solely or entirely to training, which is, so like I feel like I do this stuff before, which is extremely limiting to me in the long term.
Yeah. So with me, I think my problem is, and I think I've narrowed it down pretty closely to I have a hard time with like self-worth. I've struggled with it for a long time, and I didn't realize that I struggled with it. Like it wasn't something that I even knew existed.
Mm-hmm.
That knowing that I'm worth it, and we've talked about this so many times I couldn't even count because it's something that I do. I tell people all the time, like when somebody's talking to me and I can hear like doubt in what they want, like they know what they want. You can tell they're passionate about it, and then they doubt their ability to get there. My urge is to tell them that they're worth it, to keep trying and keep pushing and keep going and never stop. That's why I did the team never quit thing I'm still doing it. Like I'm never going to quit this journey. Um, and I encourage everybody to embody that mindset because it's so important to know that quitting isn't an option.
Mm-hmm.
But my problem is like there's a couple layers to mine as to where I don't see my success. And I know a lot of people say that like I don't feel like I'm that successful, blah 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 blah. But I physically don't see it. Like on if I look in the mirror 10 times a day, I might only see out of a month. If I did that for a month, I bet you I'd only see like actual progress in myself 4 or 5 times
Out of roughly 300.
Yeah, I literally don't see it. Like I still like when I walk down the aisles at the Walmart, with my family, I turn sideways as I try to sneak past somebody, and I don't need to. I know that I'm sitting in my truck recording this podcast with the seat forward and the steering wheel down, and there's a considerable gap in between my body and the steering wheel. But it doesn't register in my brain that that's different than before when I used to be crammed into this seat, barely fit or didn't fit, made it work. So there's a disconnect there. And I think that's just from years of not liking who I was and not liking what I am. And I'm learning, I'm trying. So that's the one level. And then the other is I dwell on the negative of every comment. So if somebody makes a comment about my dedication to going to the gym, because it's a non-negotiable. Like I have a dedication to I am going to work out 6 days a week, period. It's happening. I have a dedication to my diet. I have a dedication to my family and being a good person.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody makes a comment on that, even if there's not a negative in their comment, I dwell on their comment as negative. Like I could never do what you do. I don't know how you do it all the time. I think when somebody says something like that to me, I think, well, they're right. I mean, I probably can't do this all the time, or I probably won't, or there's going to be these times where I'm not going to go, and then I'm going to fail, and like all these things. Like I don't understand it, and I think it's a mental issue of, like I said, self-worth. Like I don't realize that I need to live what I'm telling other people to do. And I can say that, right? I'm telling everybody that right now, but I still have to make that happen.
Well, I think a lot of it too, for me, being in a different type of scenario is I still think we can find commonality in the fact that in order to remedy this for both of us, it would be something as simple as asking the question why. Like, why not? And I try when we have these podcasts, I always try to avoid sounding very corny and repetitive with some of the things that we say, because you get into like the cliche motivational words and catchphrases, and I always try to avoid that. But
Me too.
that was exactly what I needed, though. It was like, why not? So, like, if you look at someone who you would deem the best trainer in the world, why can't that be me? There's nothing that separates my ability from theirs. because at one point they were someone with the same amount or limitations in resources. They were potentially the same person, geographically speaking, because I'll even make, you know, excuses for myself, or not necessarily excuses for myself, but, I'll kind of be self-limiting even based on like geography. Like, hey, well, the area I live in, it's got a low socioeconomic status, so there's not a lot of money. And when you are in an area that's not very affluent, a lot of people aren't willing to spend a lot of money on athletic trainers or personal trainers. So my client list isn't as big as it could. And then, somewhere along the lines, you have to ask those questions like, why? Like, why not? Why can't I be the best trainer in the world? And slowly, and I can speak this from personal experience, and I hope that this is something that you get to do over time, is slowly I've improved that sense of self-worth. Not that I ever thought I had self-worth issues, but you get to continue to tell yourself that positive speak, because you just keep asking why not. It's like in a couple episodes, or maybe last episode, you and I recently talked about the number of clients that I have in the gym, like athletes that I have. And you said, last year, if you would have said you had this many clients, I would have said there's no way I was able to handle it. There's absolutely no way. I could barely handle the number I got now. And then that number increased by 10. And then that number increased by 10 more. And then that number increased by 10 more. And then suddenly it's like seemingly overwhelming, but I'm still logistically making it work. So it's like, why can't I train 50 people at a time, or 80 people at a time, or whatever the figures are? So like for
Right.
me, over the past year, I've kind of just been on this constant kick of asking myself, why not? Like, why can't you do that? Because there's some particular things where there may be some limiting factors that are viable excuses. Like, I could say I want to play in the NBA, but I'm 31 and I'm 5'9". Like, probably there are some genetic variables and some time variables that are very, very heavily working against me.
Right.
In that instance, sure. But there are a lot of instances where I think that people, myself included, self-limit them because they just don't ask the question, why not? Because if you actually
Yeah.
sit down and think, why not, you realize, like, man, I really don't have anything limiting me other than I must just not want this bad enough.
I couldn't agree more with that. I like that train of thought there, the why not. And I think I need to start using it more and more and more, because like, not even just in the weight loss and physical fitness realm of my life, but like, I have further education that I want to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my lack of education, for one, and I have some learning disabilities that I had when I was a kid, and I used them so heavily as a crutch when I was younger, that it's just become a way of life. Honestly,
well, I got to interrupt you with that, dude. I have to bring that up because I think that you're at an important crossroads where you have to kind of annotate that a little bit, because you can bring those up and still not have them be an excuse, though. Because sometimes people can use that in, like you said, in the past, you used as an excuse, or a crutch was the term that you used.
yes.
Well, I think it's still important to bring that self up, but just in the sense of you're aware of it. So like there's
Right.
things that become excuses and things that become topics that you need to be aware of. So like I could say, well, I'm not accomplishing the physique that I want to gain because I have too much going on. My schedule's too busy. That's an excuse. What I could do is I need to be aware of my schedule so I can set my meals accordingly, so I still get all my food in and I still get all my training in. So like if you say with like, your learning disability or whatever, you kind of have to use that still. I think that it would be silly for people to disregard something like that. Because
Right.
if you just blindly say, I have no excuses, I'm going towards the goal, like you're really, really failing to prepare well. And I think that's going to end in failure, not for you specifically, but just for anybody. So like what is an excuse and what is like an absolutely understandable variable that you need to account for?
Right. Absolutely. So with that, it's like, I don't, I haven't figured out in my brain how to navigate that road where I stop using it as an excuse and start using it as fuel to fuel this fire. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know how to yet, and it'll be interesting over the next couple of years because the one of my big goals that I haven't talked about, I don't I just haven't talked about it, is education. I
Yeah.
want to achieve some levels of education over the next couple of years, probably over the next, I'd say 3 to 5 years is how long it'll take. I want to accomplish some things that in my head are unobtainable, and I that makes it that much more desirable to me. Like,
Mhm.
I've told myself for my entire life that you're not smart enough, you can't read, you don't eat, you write like a 40-year-old, your grammar's not that good. Like I don't have a big vocabulary or the book knowledge, the book smarts, because I didn't apply myself in school.
Don't you notice
So
that
I
people gravitate, especially you, because we've talked about that a myriad of times. Don't you see that people gravitate towards things that they're bad at? Because
Yeah.
you gravitate towards comfort,
Hmm.
and then eventually you gravitate. I think that people reach this point in their life where they almost have like a crisis where their like self-actualization has, or their full potential has never been realized. And then they want to become the opposite of what they were. So like the instance that we've talked about with you is, living a sedentary, morbidly obese lifestyle and then transitioning into you want to be a triathlete, like the exact opposite end of that spectrum. Like there's huge polarity there. Like even
Yes.
for me, you know, I was really, really skinny as a kid, and I always wanted to be really muscular because it was the exact opposite of what I was growing up. Like I was really, really skinny, and people would always make comments. Not and I don't want to make it sound like I was bullied or anything, but people would always make comments throughout my whole childhood about how skinny I was, and that was kind of a motivating thing of, okay, well, I want to be the exact opposite of this. Then I don't want to be skinny. I want to be really big. And so I feel like we always tend to gravitate towards things that, we feel we're far away from. Like, what would be the most desirable goal for someone who's fat to reach? Well, to not be fat anymore, right? Or what would
Right.
be the most desirable goal for someone who isn't well educated to reach something that educates them, become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. So I just think that that's kind of natural progression of things as far as like how you and I have gone about this, at least in our relatively short lifetime.
Yes, absolutely.
And I
I,
feel
I
like
have
me
to.
too, like I even I it's almost like I have two lifetimes. I feel like I lived up until I was 30 and I'm 31 now. Over the past year and a half, my life has like drastically changed. Actually, I'd say 2.5 years because it started at 29 because for some reason there was just something specific about that number, 30, that would
Yeah.
eat at me. So all through my 29, like the year that I turned 29, it was like in my head, like, holy cow, the next one's 30. Like, what have you accomplished? What have you done? What legacy have you left? So the last like 2.5 years have really been eye openers for me. And I've kind of changed the way I go about things. Now, the hard part is you can't just change things. Like everything that I've tried to fix about my life, like learning to be able to say no to people, learning to value your time more, learning to ask for things that you deserve because you deserve them and not because you don't want to be mean to people or you always want to be helpful. Take time to dedicate yourself and be selfish in that regard. So, like, there's all these things that I fixed, quote unquote, fixed, trying to fix about my life. And I'm still gradually and slowly fixing them over the past 2.5 years because when you spend, you know, 29, 28 years of your life living a particular way, you get very, very set in those ways. And I'm not going to be able to
Yeah.
offset nearly 3 decades in just a matter of years. So I
No
continue to
doubt.
work at that. And I think that that's like where you brought up being a long term thing. It's just, man, one of the hardest things is managing that long term mentality, but keeping your foot on the gas. That's where I think people get confused, myself included. And I would always say, like, take bodybuilding for example, just because it's a very measurable and specific example that we can kind of reference here. When I set out, and did my first bodybuilding show, I don't look anything like I expected to look when I first started competing 7 years ago. Like when I competed 7 years ago for the first time, or whatever it was, 6 years ago. No, probably 7 or 8 now. Gosh. But when I competed for the first time, you would have said, okay, what do you want to look like in 7 years? I would have picked a physique that realistically I could have really well gotten and achieved in 7 years. And it's much better than where I'm at now. Right.
Right.
So I'm at the place where I have to have that sense of urgency. So you have the long-term expectation, but sometimes long-term means slow for me. Like I would say, oh, well, I want to look like that in 7 years and I'll get there. Like me missing this one meal on a Saturday night isn't going to matter because I'll have thousands and thousands and thousands of meals over the next, several years to get to my dream physique or whatever, or get to my where I want to be physique wise, right? So it's like It's very easy to miss. I need to be able to blend long-term thinking with still keeping the foot on the gas hard, because sometimes people think, and again, I'm the one that's super guilty of this, they think that long-term thinking means coasting, and it doesn't. Slow. I don't think, I'm going to go out on a limb here, say something that could potentially be very controversial. Slow and steady doesn't win the race. I think fast and steady wins the race. You have to,
I agree.
And it's got to be for a long time. I don't care what anybody tells you. People that say slow and steady tend to be people that aren't accomplishing anything in life. And they just go about the mundane saying, well, someday it's good. You know the saying we always use, diet starts Monday, right? Everybody always say, oh, diet's going to start Monday. Why not start today? Why not start right now? And so I think that slow and steady doesn't win the race. Fast and steady does.
Slow and steady keeps you consistent, keeps you where you're at.
Sure.
Keeps you stagnant.
If you like that and you're in a good place financially, professionally, health wise, if you want to stay there, then stay there. Yeah, do go slow and steady. Make incremental progress. But for me, at this point in my life, got to go fast.
Yeah, if you like, I guess to be corny a little here, if you have a dream and you want to chase it and you want to get after it, you have to chase your dream. You have to go. You got to put your foot down and you got to go. There's nobody's going to go for you. If you need people to do things to achieve your goals, you have to light a fire under them. You have to go. I like that. Keep your foot on the gas. Proverbially, you got to stick your foot through the floorboard into the fan and let's go.
Yep. Dude, I love it. I'm getting very motivated right now as we're having this conversation.
Yeah. And it's something that I've thought about a lot lately. Like you have to burn the candle at both ends sometimes. And that's something that, like I was talking about earlier with the sleep thing, that's what I thought I was doing, but I've been realizing like I'm burning the candle at both ends, but I'm not optimizing the burn time.
Sure.
So it's time it's time to dial it up, figure it out, make the changes, and continually make the changes. Because like you said, you can't stay stagnant. You have to keep making progress. And stagnant is not progress. Like I'm doing well in my fitness journey as far as strength building. My numbers are climbing. I'm getting stronger, but I'm not seeing the scale go down. So what am I doing that I need to change? Where is that change at? And now I have a direction. So let's go. And it's time to go.
Love it. I feel like that's like a very succinct and very appropriate way to end the podcast episode, huh?
Yeah. Let's go. So,
all right,
like,
yeah. It's awesome. Anything else you want to add before we close up shop then?
Don't sleep on your dreams. Like, I love the fact that not everybody, but people dream and they have these huge dreams, but don't sleep on them. Don't only visit that paradox universe for yourself when your eyes are closed and you're in REM and you're resting. Remember them and then go after them. Like, you don't have to do the same thing because it's what you've done. Justin doesn't have to be 526 pounds forever because that's what he's done.
Yep.
You don't have to it doesn't have to just be a dream. You got to go.
I like it.
So, yeah,
I think that pretty well wraps it up, man.
that's it.
And with that, we have come to the end of another episode of the Chasing Dreams podcast with Charlie and Justin. This has been episode 69. We appreciate you guys joining us this week, and hopefully we'll hear back from you soon.
Unbreakable, unstoppable.